16,000 mostly trouble-free miles. This is going to be our 16,000 mile review of the 2019 CRF450L. And if you haven't done it yet, I want you to go back and I want you to look at all the other reviews I've done up to this point, so I don't have to repeat myself over and over again. The L has continued to blow me away by how reliable it's been. I did have one breakdown on the Washington backcountry discovery route. The stator went out and the stator was 100% my fault. I overloaded the electrical system by adding a couple too many things. And I believe when I switched on the air pump, which uses 10 amps or can use up to 10 amps, I believe that was just too much for the stator to take, and it had enough and it quit out. It quit on me. Again, totally my fault. I overdid it. I've replaced that with a Ricky Stator rewound stator, and it works like you think it would. It puts out a consistent 13.8, 0.7 volts. So for this review, let's talk about all the questions I get, and most of them have to do with the parts that I've added to make this a better adventure bike. The biggest one I get is the Rekluse clutch. Do I think it's worth the money and would I get it? If you have $1,000 to spend on a clutch, or if your clutch is burnt out right now, spend the money. Learn how to use it. And let me talk about that real quick. Rekluse auto clutch lesson. Number one, it does not shift for you. Basically, it's a centrifugal clutch that when the RPMs dip below a certain RPM, call it 1800, 1600, it disengages the clutch. Their EXP disc, I forget what they call it. It's a centrifugal clutch. If they give it a fancy name, they can charge you more for it. So when you are on the gas and the RPMs come up, the centrifugal clutch opens up and engages the clutch pad. So when you need to use your clutch, and everybody says that, but John, you don't have a clutch anymore. What are you going to do? You do have a clutch. It's just not activated by your left hand anymore. It's activated by your right hand. So you have to clutch your bike with the throttle. And the RPMs where the clutch engages is high enough that it's got enough rotational mass, it'll keep spinning, it won't stall the bike. Okay, it's about where you would let the clutch out anyways. Rekluse has done a fantastic job of figuring out where that point is, where that engagement, disengagement point for the clutch is. And they've basically programmed the Rekluse clutch to engage and disengage at that point. So, back to the original point, you do have a clutch. In fact, you still have the clutch lever if you want to. You can rev the bike up to 4 grand and use the clutch like normal. What I've found is that you just roll off the throttle, disengages the clutch. It does 2 things at once. And once you get used to that, you will just go, oh my God, why don't they just put this stock on every bike? I don't know. They ought to. Okay? So that's the Rekluse clutch. Totally worth $1,000, especially if you're lazy like me. Next question, the Nomad tank, is it worth it? Do you need 5 gallons? And my answer to that is maybe. It depends on you and what you're doing. If you are 99% doing trails or short trips, then no, you don't need 5 gallons of gas. If you find that you have the IMS 3-gallon tank and you're always carrying an extra gallon in a Rotopax or in a bag, in a soda bottle, I don't care. If you always have another gallon or 2 on your bike, why not just put it up in the gas tank where it belongs, or where it won't fall off and where you can't lose it, and where when you crash it won't get a rock through it. I mean, trust me, Mick has made these things super solid. I've yet to poke a hole in it, and I've tried really, really hard. So is the 5-gallon tank worth it? If you're always carrying an extra gallon or 2 of gas, then yes, it is absolutely 100% worth it. Next question. The fairing. Would you do it again? I've had that a lot because the fairing is very expensive because it's Italian, and we know everything that's Italian is expensive. My answer to that question is, for me, this has worked phenomenally on the road. I'm on the highway doing 80 miles an hour and the wind is non-existent. It's like a real honest to God road bike. It's not quite a gold wing. We're getting there. But the wind protection is fantastic. And on back roads like these guys, where you can do 40 and 50 miles an hour with that fairing, I can stand up and the wind doesn't hit me in the chest at all. It doesn't knock me over and try to make me sit down. So to me, for how I ride, yes, it's totally worth it. Right now I have the Vortex on. I also have, I think we talked about this, I have the Graves Motorsports muffler is still on there. I love the sound of the Graves. It did, I think this is my fault, it did melt my taillight. That might have been because I have re-wrapped my exhaust. Before I had it wrapped from here up and left this part here open. This time I add a little bit more. I didn't think it would make that much of a difference. It apparently has. Is the Graves worth $800? Man, if you're sitting on 100 grand and you just don't know what to do with it, it's worth every penny. If you are thinking about busting out your credit card to pay for an exhaust, now you better start thinking about your budget, okay? Those kind of questions I cannot answer because I get all the time, dude, how much did you spend on your bike? I'm like, I don't know. How much is it worth? It's the only bike like it in the world. I don't know. That to me is priceless. Anyways, Vortex or Power Commander? As of this video, Vortex is the only game in town. Get and Power Commander are going to do some other things apparently, but at the moment, Vortex is the way to go. Vortex, is it worth the 700 bucks? Let's talk about this because this is the other question. Let's talk about it this way. Everybody complains that you have to spend 10 grand to get the bike and then put another at least 1,000 bucks, if not 1,500 into it to make it with the same horsepower as the KTM or just to make it more livable. That is every bike on the market right now that is trying to be EPA compliant and has a fuel injected system on it that's run by an ECU. Every EPA compliant bike out there has been detuned in some way to make it legal. So I don't care what bike you buy if it comes with a registration and you can register it with your Department of Transportation and EPA said it's okay to sell. The first thing you're going to do is swap out those two things on every bike. It doesn't matter what bike it is. It's just the way it is anymore. It used to be that all that EPA stuff you could detune yourself, right? You could rejet your carbs, you could whatever, punch out the muffler, you could do whatever you wanted to. But now that everything's controlled by a computer, you can't do that anymore. So, to the people who say you're going to spend 10 grand on a bike and then you've got to spend another $1,500 to $2,000 to make it, what it should be, is the ECU worth it? Yes, it makes the bike run like you wish it would run from the factory. And all the new things that are going to come out. Get is coming out with an ECU, as I understand. And Power Commander also has their oxygen sensor. The problem with the oxygen sensor has always been that you have to figure out how to hook it up. And there are companies out there that are trying to work that out. I think Mosko Co. is one of them. But at the moment, the Vortex ECU is the way to go. So when somebody complains, oh, but now you got to put a Vortex on it. You don't have to. You certainly don't have to. but you're going to want to, depending on how you're riding it. Sorry I got off on a rant there. Let's get back to my bike and my review of it. Okay, what are some more questions I get all the time? What gearing do I run? I run 13 stock in the front, and I either 51, 52, or 53 in the back. 51 is stock. I like 52 as a compromise. 53 off-road works really well with all the extra weight that I have on the bike. Right now I have a 51 tooth in the back because of how many highway miles I had to put on it, and it works just fine. Keep in mind my bike is not completely stock. What tires do I run all the time? What's the biggest size tire you can get on without a lift? I usually have something like the Motoz Ral Z on there. You can see it's fairly aggressive. It is noisy on the road. It's buzzy. It doesn't thump, but it definitely buzzes. And off-road, it works really, really well. It is my favorite BDR tire. And the reason it's my favorite is that it doesn't have the most traction, but it is the most predictable tire ever. Same thing in the front. This is the Ral Z front. Motoz is coming out with a new front tire that's supposed to be the latest, greatest, best ever. I don't have that at the moment. This bike is so adept at doing whatever you ask it to do and whatever you set it up to do that some of these questions are not a simple answer. You just can't say, oh, just do this, this, and this. Other a couple things, and you're going to be happy. It always comes down to how far street, how far dirt are you going? To supermoto, motocross. You got to figure that out. And then decide where it needs to perform its best, right? If you got a supermoto bike, but you're going to come up here off-road, then where do you need your bike to perform? Because once you're off-road with those slicks, you're done, right? So now it becomes, yes, it's great for, you're going to do 90% road, but that 10% off-road, you're going to hate life. So set it up for where it needs to perform at. That's why I've got a lot of compromises on my bike for road riding. Between the fairing and the big giant tank, right, that all moves it from motocross, keep sliding it towards the road just a little bit. But those are more comfort and convenience. They don't actually take away from the dirt performance of this bike. Yes, they make it a little heavier, and they make it a little harder to see the front tire, etc., but they don't actually affect the performance. And where do I need the bike to perform? In the dirt, on the expert sections of the BDRs. I need it to perform on baby head hills with extra luggage on the back. I still need it to be a dirt bike. So to that end, I haven't changed any of the dirt bike aspects of the bike, right? I still have knobbies on. I still got all the Showa suspension parts, which I love. I've added a heavier rear spring to hold the luggage up, because otherwise it just sags to the ground and back. But for the most part, it is still a dirt bike underneath all that sexy Italian fiberglass and that super solid Australian plastic. So at her heart, it is still a dirt bike. There, I'm going to give you a real quick tour of my setup here. And I think most of it you've seen, but maybe not all of it, okay? So here, we're going to run through this real quick. A couple of the things you might not have seen. Number one, here's my 12 o'clock Labs mini gauge. It's got water in it, and they're supposed to be sending me a new one, but whatever. We've got fork bleeders, which don't forget to bleed your forks. We've got my gauge setup. So I made this out of Kydex. I also made this little piece right here out of Kydex. And this is my grip heaters. That's high, that's low, that's off. This switch here is for the USB port for my nav tower, so that what I can do is I can leave it on when the bike is off if I don't want to kill the nav tower, right? Because if I walk away, if I walk away, this battery will drain pretty quick, and the battery in the bike actually takes a good long time. This is a spare. It doesn't do anything right now, but it's there if I wanted to add something. These two things are 12-volt power takeoffs. This one goes through the PDM, so it is monitored. This one goes through this goes to your accessory port. Same thing, it's also only on when the bike is on. So all of this stuff, with the exception of my USB ports, turns off when the bike is off, so I can't accidentally leave something on. If I accidentally leave this on, it ain't a thing, because once this battery's charged, it won't take long. It won't actually take that much juice out of my Honda battery. Oh, what else? So on my bike, and here's the PDM 60, that's the power module. So that is wired to come on or go off with the bike. It's programmable, so you can make it do whatever you want. That's what that thing is. What else do I have that I don't normally talk about? Oh, everybody asks about these guards every time. I'm almost gonna put a sticker right there. These are for the RX. Which ones are those for? The RX. Hey, where'd you get the RX? Okay. You can see it's kitted out right now in full adventure gear with the Mosko Moto Rekluse 80, which I really like. I've got the hood tank bag, which I have a love-hate relationship with. I love it. I love how it works. I wish I could push it further front, and I wish it didn't stick back into my belly. My belly hits that, I'm just saying. It's also got the Scott steering damper for highway use for the most part. It really keeps the wobbles down on the front end of this bike. And one of the great things about the CRF450L, and it's another great thing about the KTM 500 series, is that these are okay road bikes. In other words, they'll do 80 or 90 miles an hour without too much complaint. All right, there you go. That is my 16,000 mile Rant. Not much has changed. The only things that I've actually changed on the bike since the last video were the stator and maybe some other minor things. But for the most part, it is the same ADV, BDR, traveling beast that it's always been. And again, 16,000 miles on it. And I've beat it up, I've roughed it up, and it only yelled at me once when I overloaded its electrical system. And that was, again, my fault. It yelled at me and I deserved it. But we fixed that, and everything's good now. Everything that's on the bike, as of the video you're watching, should be down in the list below. If you want to know what is on the bike right now, it is all down there. All right, well that was way more than I wanted to talk about.